Games, board games. We might be talking about 3D modeling, but we're not gonna shout. How does Hwa Siang make some 3D models for the game that will cause you trouble if you don't really think about what to do? Then, like most games, I am sure you will lose. But anyway, these art and modeling comes to bring you joy because games are quite similar to toys in a way. Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good whatever it is, wherever you are. 10 a.m. ish UK time. Time for Busy Beats and Board Game Blether. And today, episode 825, I thought we'd talk about how do you sculpt minis. And there's no elaborate list of stuff because I thought we'd go through a lovely bunch of photographs that you've curated for us. And thank you for joining us, Hwa Siang, again.
Yo, thank you, Bess. Love to
And
be here.
likewise. And let me ask you, um, where exactly are you in as much detail as you're able to share? Um, and what have you been up to in the past couple of days? Recent highlights, living life and seeing the sights. Recent highlights, playing games and other delights. Recent highlights. I assume you still haven't got managed to play any games.
Nah, still working these few days. Yep. Currently,
So,
I'm in this place is actually my office.
okay.
It's my workplace. Yep. So it's only been 3 days. I haven't managed to play any games yet.
And what is a typical day in the life of you? What have you been up to, let's say, over the past 24 hours?
All right. So my day job is a bit demanding. I woke up at 7 a.m. and I straight go to work and work until sometimes 5 o'clock, sometimes 6, sometimes 7, depend on if there's any urgent shipments or not. So it's like quite a long working hour.
Yeah, 12-hour shift, that's not great. And that's 5 days a week or
6 days.
6 days a week. My gosh.
Yes.
Yeah, that doesn't leave a lot of time for other things. And
Yep.
still, you manage to take time to do illustrations, to do modeling. I mean, how do you manage to do it? Is it through not sleeping much?
Okay, there are some moments during work that I can sneak in some jobs. Yeah, when the machines are running in a stable is running stably, then I can walk away and do some of my own stuff. Yeah.
So you might have like 5 minutes here or 10 minutes there and things like that, but you always need to keep an eye out, I guess.
Yes, I have this doorbell with me that I fixed for a caller that the worker will be pressing on it and then calling me down if there's any problem with the machines, right? So
Hmm.
yep, when the bell rings, I have to go down and work on the machines. Yep.
Okay, well, I mean, at least it sounds quite fortunate that you've got a job where you do get these short breaks. I mean, that
Yeah.
at least is a good thing.
Yep. Yep.
And myself, I've still not been doing as much as I'd like. I'm not going to lie. I've been, yeah, watching a bit too much of the telly. Um, watched a
Great.
Brazilian program which is about time travel. It's a sort of romantic comedy. Someone goes back to 15 years old, and then when they change things in the past, it changes the future. I mean, it's not an original premise. It's one that I've
Mhm.
seen before. I mean, it's happened over and over again, but they've done it brilliantly, and they really explore in a heartwarming way the ramifications of saying, "Hey, by doing this, it has ramifications of the future, and it makes you
Yep.
think about the relationships that you currently have around you. I
Mm-hmm.
have been trying to arrange some things for tomorrow, but now I need to well, we'll get into what I need to do afterwards. But brilliant thing. What's a little thing which is brilliant? I'm going to say that a brilliant thing is routine. A brilliant thing, even if you start off with a small thing like getting outside and taking just like a quick walk around the block, that I managed to do, or starts off with a shower. Like sometimes it can feel like, why am I doing this? I'm going to waste like 10 minutes. But I think that having a small part of routine can
Mm-hmm.
help you get your day started. And I think it's really useful for the body to then change the mind and say, okay, get rid of what you've done now. It's the time to do stuff. And I think,
Yeah.
it's
Change your mindset.
exactly. So let's carry on. As always, if anyone's got any comments, feel free to ask questions, fun like follow. But let's talk about everything that's going on. How do you make minis? What is your journey? Please tell us. Hwa Siang.
Yeah. So today we'll be talking kind of like a journey of my life and how I get to start making miniatures and stuff for board games. So starting with this picture, you can see that I'm working in a plastic manufacturing for bottles and stuff, mainly all the big things. Okay. Then I started this around 6 years ago when I met my wife, and she had uh, this factory that was run in her family, and I started working there, and that's how I got until today. And I there is a plastic injection machine here as well. So I was thinking, how can I create products to be sold for her company, to gain more profit, right? So
Hmm.
I
And
like
what was
toys.
her company?
Her company name.
No, I mean, what kind of company was it? Can you explain that a bit more?
Okay, so the company is making mostly bottles for
Oh,
anyone who wish to put any liquid content in it. There are people who sell sanitizers. They need those containers, right?
oh wow.
And stuff
So
like that.
your company, your family company and your wife's company are a perfect match.
No, no, no. This is my wife's company.
Oh, okay.
I work in the company.
Ah, okay. Understood.
Yeah. Yeah, I come from a family background, or a different family background. My dad was a flea market vendor, so he sells like trinkets and stuff on the flea market. I'm not from a factory background.
Okay, understood.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
I thought from last time that this was your family's, and I
No, no, no.
understand now
It's
that you're saying it's my family because it's your wife and everything. But yeah,
yes.
anyway, carry on, please.
All right. So I started to sculpt things, and one day, one of my friends asked, why not you make a board game instead of just making toys,
Mm-mm.
Yeah, so I started sculpting stuff like that, which you can see right now, like tanks. I like mechanical things like science fictions and stuff. So I started with this miniaturized version of a metal slug, which is from a video game, arcade
Yes.
video game. Yeah. So I made this to be sold and to try and gain experience to see how this process will turn into profit. So this is my first creation. Yeah. So how I will go through the process of how I created this thing,
Yes,
and
please do.
so we can follow the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The first one, I'll create a shape using polymer clay. And then after that, I will refine the shape, which is going to number 2. And then after that, I will do all the parts separately, like the guns at the back.
And
They
how
can
do you
go.
sculpt the polymer clay? I mean, I assume that's at the start. It's something that you can just manage using your hands, but then later you use small knives and
Yes.
little.
Okay,
Okay.
so polymer clay, they will harden after you baked it. So you have to put it in an oven, and then after you baked it, it become hardened. This is one of the type of clay that I use, but you will know later. I'll explain a bit. I use different type of clays to for different things. Okay, so yeah, how to manipulate the thing is basically just you can take a stick or anything that you can just poke it with because it's soft, and you just shape it as you would. Uh, with any tools you want. You can use a screwdriver. As you can see on number 5, you'll see a small screwdriver on the top
Mm-mm-mm-mm.
left of the video. I use that a lot because it's durable and also it's very fine and it's cheap, right?
And
People
this
would
was
think,
your first ever miniature that you made. And
obviously, I'm from an art background. During my school days, I did some other sculpture as well. And I do made miniatures before, but they are not that intricate. My skill have improved over the years. This one is around 6 years ago, and I started studying around 10, 12 years ago. So it's around
okay.
halfway there.
Sorry, so you were taking us through the journey of this before I rudely interrupted you. So number
Yeah.
one, you've used your hands mainly, and you've made this approximate shape, but
Yeah.
presumably with the stick for the cannon.
Yeah.
Number two, you're adding more details. Number
Yeah.
three,
You have to think of the separate parts that you want to put on, so that it can move and stuff, right? So number
mm-mm-mm.
4, I almost arrived at the finished product. So I baked it with the oven so that the clay is dried up. It's cured. Cured means that it's hardened. And then
Okay.
after that, number 5, you will notice that some parts are in yellow color.
Mm-mm.
Those are another type of clay which is called epoxy putty. They harden by when you mix two part of them together. The next slide will see that one. So this is used to fix those refined small details that I want to change. Okay, so these are the
Mm-mm.
two materials that I use to sculpt most of the time. For the quick base, I will always use the polymer clay. The particular brand I use is Super Sculpey firm. Okay, and I would use this to make the shape roughly, and then after I'm okay with it, I'll bake it, and then if the shape still needs to rework, you cannot put more super scalpy on it if it's already baked. So you have to use another kind, which is the epoxy
Mm-mm.
putty. So there is the yellow and blue tube. You have to mix both of them together. It's like a putty.
So
And
once you've mixed both of them together, then you've got like maybe a minute until it's just going to harden.
no, it's not that fast.
Okay.
It will take around 2 hours like that to fully
Oh,
cure.
wow. Okay.
Yeah, so you have time to manipulate it, and you can use water to smooth it out. So that's a very useful putty as well. There are a lot
And
of different. Yeah, sorry.
presumably, like even though you've chosen these two brands, people could search in their local shops for whatever brand they want.
Yes,
And I could, when you talk about baking, it doesn't need to be any high, technology. It can literally be in an oven,
yes, it is
like
an
we've
oven.
got
Yeah,
in any, house in the
yes,
UK or the USA or wherever people are. 'Cause can I ask? Because I understand in Thailand, people don't actually have ovens in their house. Is that the same in Malaysia, or do you have ovens in your house in Malaysia
okay, when you talk about those built-in big ovens that you have in a Western country, we don't have those.
for cooking a chicken? Yeah.
Yeah. We don't have those kind. We will buy a separate oven, which are some smaller ones. For people who like to bake cakes, they'll buy the bigger ones, but it's not attached to the tabletop. They are separate
Okay.
entities. Yeah.
So if you rent a place or if you are just staying in a place for moving into a place, you shouldn't expect an oven. Like in the
No.
UK, it's kind of like, whoa, there's no oven. What's going on here?
Yeah, yeah,
Whereas
I
in Malaysia,
understand that.
it sounds like it's similar to Thailand, where it's like, oh yeah, of course there's not oven. What were you expecting?
Yeah, we like to cook using the stove, so we don't use
Yeah.
oven that much. All right.
Okay, but
So yeah.
yes, you were talking about the knowledge required.
Yes. By the way, we can go back to the last slide. These, if you want to search for those materials, you don't need to use these brands. You can just search for polymer clay. All the polymer
Hmm.
clays are almost similar. They are big. There are a lot of different brands, so you can just search for them. And for the epoxy putty, you can search for epoxy putty. You don't need to use milliput. There are other as well, green stuff. You can go wild. Okay, just go and buy them.
And
So what?
so, I mean, presumably you've used Super Sculpt Pay and Milliput because you think that these are the best for you. Is that right?
I'm just saying for these particular cases, I have since changed the brands I use to a more local one because it's easier to acquire and
Mm-mm-mm-mm.
cheaper as well. But these ones are like industrial recognized good quality stuff. So I'll just
Okay.
put this as an example.
And I'm aware of FEMO. I don't know if this is something that you're aware of over there.
Yes, yes,
Like another type of polymer clay that I
yes,
think is very widely available and had a
yep,
little bit of fun. Although, and I
yep,
assume that
sure.
the softness of the clay is going to vary from brand to brand. So maybe
Yes,
you prefer something a little bit softer, maybe you prefer something a little bit harder, and
yep,
presumably what works for Hwa might not work for someone else.
yes. So that brings us to the next slide, which is the materials you can buy, but then again, what separates you from using the material to make sculptures that are um, professional looking is these things.
Mm-mm.
Okay, so for like what you said, material properties and attributes, they are very important. Like all brands, they are different. They have different hardness. They have different kind of chemical alteration. You can use different chemical to change certain properties of the clay and all those things. These are all knowledge that I accumulate throughout my experience, and they are
Mm-mm.
they are not readily available. They are only available for like if you search for them and in like certain Reddit posts, like every
Mm-mm.
nooks and crannies of the internet, you'll get something. But then again, you still need to try the material out yourself. So
Yes.
uh, these are the knowledge that you can't you can buy this knowledge because you have to buy the materials and try it. Okay, I bought a lot
But
of different
ultimately,
material.
you
Yeah.
have to spend the time. You have to work out
Yes.
what's suitable for you. I mean, I've not done a lot of this, but I can definitely see some sorts of comparison to watercolor paint, where,
Yeah.
I use watercolor paint in a different way to other people because it's what works for me. And this is the kind of coloration that I want on my paper. And you've got to work out what works for you.
Yes, and different watercolor have different pigment value as well, so
Mm-mm-mm-mm.
different brand and stuff. Basically, that's what I mean. And then each material has their own handling method, which is quite different. Some epoxy putty you can use water to soften it. Some you have to use alcohol. Some doesn't soften even if you use anything else. So you might need to experiment with the materials you have. They might not be the same. Okay, so the next one is the sculpting knowledge. Like how do you shape something, the shape manipulation? What tools do
Mm-mm-mm.
you use when you want to do certain shapes and stuff like that? It's through a lot of experimentations and also practice. You can't really just like watch a video and then you suddenly become like a sculpting master. You have to understand 3D spatial understanding, and then you have to know scale treatment, which is like if you have a very small model, you can't put a lot of details on it. You have to make sure you amplify certain features
Mm-mm-mm.
so that it looks better. Although sometimes, I would use this example for a video game called Warcraft. In
Yeah, yeah,
Warcraft
yeah.
3,
World of Warcraft.
yeah, in the
Or do you mean the
strategy.
old Warcraft with the top-down?
Yeah.
Um,
In Warcraft 3, the character looks ridiculous because the house is really small, but then the character like very big with big heads and big arms and stuff. But then again, when you scale them up and then you look at them from afar, if they didn't scale up the arms and the head and all those, it will look it will look very bad. It won't be
mm-mm-mm.
recognizable, the shapes. So it's the same thing with miniature. If you are making really small things, you have to make sure the shapes and stuff looks
Yeah,
recognizable. Yeah.
it's about the hierarchy, I guess. What do you
Yeah.
need to be visible? It's almost like makeup on stage. Like if you
Yes.
are doing something in the theater where it's a bit dark and then the light kind of flattens your face, then you
Yeah.
need
The
to have
highlight.
really extreme makeup, which might
Yes.
be a bit much if you were wearing it day to day. But then because you're a bit far away in the theater,
Yes.
you need to really amplify the eyes and amplify the mouth and make it super visible just so that people can see it from the back seats. That's all.
Yep. Yep.
And it's
Yep.
the same, I guess, with a tiny miniature. If you've got something this size, and it's like, okay, what really matters here? Sure, if
Yes.
there's a gun, you need to have the gun like
The
four
gun.
times as big as normal potentially.
Not that much, but it depends on each case to case basis. So you need to really think about that as well, and also the durability. If you are doing making a miniature that's had a lot of thin, like
Mm-mm.
appendage and stuff, it might not be a very good production. You might need to think of how to make it more durable. Maybe you can bend, you have to make it so that it doesn't break. If
Yeah,
it
you don't
breaks
want those
easily,
fiddly little bits. Like
yeah,
again with the gun, you maybe don't want the fit skinny gun barrel. Maybe
yeah.
thicken
So
it up a little bit.
maybe instead they will put the gun sticking them to the body, like the soldier is holding
Mm-mm-mm.
it, so that the body is actually supporting the gun instead. So these are things that you need to understand in order to create a proper 3D model. All right.
And presumably, before you've even started this, do you draw some sketches in pencil and pen,
Yes,
or
I do.
mm-mm.
Well, I will go through a longer version of the process when I started create one of my games called Vagrant Dash.
Yeah,
Later,
we'll
I will
look at
share
that
with
in
it.
a
Yeah,
moment.
yeah. And after that, if you want to mass produce your sculpture, you need to make sure you know how to mold and cast. Mold is to create molds. Usually, for home, uh, people staying at home, they will use silicone mold. Okay, silicone mold, and then you need to know how to do all the molding techniques like venting. If you don't vent your mold, you'll get trapped air bubble inside your miniature, which is very ugly, and it will ruin the whole thing if it doesn't come
Mm.
out correctly. So there's also different type of silicones as well, materials and stuff. Different type of venting techniques and different type of mold techniques, and you need to know how to deal with undercuts and overhang. These are the things that are most difficult to handle.
And will
Under
you tell us a bit more about the molding technique later on?
I think I won't be focusing too much on that. There are a lot of YouTube videos online
Okay,
that
can you
we can.
give us a quick overview of how you personally did molding? Like, if let's say I want to do a mold of, well, there's no point to me doing a mold of
Okay,
this pen lid, but let's say
I
I've
can
made
do.
something, I've cast it. and I've made this model of a small elephant, and I'm like, okay, now I want to make a mold of this elephant that I have sculpted.
All right. A very short, like go through the whole thing. I will have a base. All right, and then I have my miniatures. I'll need to make sure I know where I want to pour the resin in. So this is my pour spout. Later, when the silicone mold is formed, I will be pouring uh, resin in here. So anyway, I'll be sticking them on a flat base. This is a soft clay. So what do we call this one? It's more like it's just clay, okay? But it's not those modeling clays. You cannot use sulfur-based modeling clay. Though this is what we call Chavan clay, the brand that I'm using, okay? And then I'm gonna stick it there like this.
Shavan, is that correct?
Chavant.
Chavnp.
Vant, Chavant. Or you can use monster clay. They are almost the same thing.
Okay.
All right. After that, I'm gonna take a PVC pipe. I'm gonna use the proper size. So like this one is too thin. You can't fit her inside. So I'll go for a bigger one. I use PVC pipe because a circle silicone mold is easier to handle than a square one. Before this, I use Lego pieces to make like a barricade, but that one is not very useful because the sides, because of a square shape, the sides will have extra silicones that are wasted. You can imagine, right? Yep. So a rounded one is easier. So after that, I will of course seal these sides, and then I'll pour silicone into it. After it dries, it will become like this. It will become like this, and then I'll pull this out.
And that is actually the mold for that model. Oh wow! It's
Not
got
this
a
one.
big split. Is that the way it's meant to be?
Yes, it is. So this is the one. So it came out. After that, I need to use a knife to cut the shapes. Okay, cutting the shapes will require some techniques as well. There are a lot of videos that are talking about this technique, but then again, I find that practice practice makes perfect. Okay, so you still need to practice. And then after that, I'm cutting it open. I'll take the original model out. Okay, and then it will create a cavity of the shapes inside, right? So there is the details inside. After that, we will use rubber band to make sure that the place I cut is close together again. And then after that, we are ready for pouring the liquid resin inside. The resin will harden after 40 minutes or so. And then after that, you can pull out the exact copy of the miniatures. All right. So that's basically the process.
It sounds like that's going to be the part, whereas the sculpting, obviously there's lots of creative potential, and you can say, oh wait, well, maybe if I do it this way, there's scope for experimentation. You do it that way, but this way is correct. But it feels like making the mold, there is more of a proper way to do it, because it needs to be very precise to make sure that all of the details from the original model are going to be transferred to all the copies, because otherwise, obviously, it doesn't matter how long and how you've spent and how much detail you've got. If it's a rubbish copy, then everyone's going to be disappointed.
So every time I'll make sure the master copy, I will have to sand them until it's really smooth and all the details are fixed. Even the fingers and the toes, you can see that. So you have to make sure your master copy is as best as it can be before you do a copy, so that you don't waste your time and money on the materials, right?
No, that's a good overview. Thank you very much for giving us that brief demonstration. And obviously, this is not a, hey, watch this video and
Yeah,
now you're
yeah,
able
yeah.
to do it. It's just like to give us some idea. And I do feel like I'm not sure if I will ever do this myself, but now at least I have an understanding. And presumably, normally, the person who's doing the mold will be different from the person who's doing the sculpting. And some people will do sculpting as 3D modeling, which might be its own completely different technique to create the mold. And yeah, but you are doing all of this yourself
Yes.
from the start. And do you, just jumping ahead a bit, with the final games, you are actually creating then all the final pieces yourself in your own factory?
Yes, you'll be seeing an example of that later. I'll be talking on one of the slide as well. Let us finish this one. So what I want to show in this slide particularly is that although things are easy, um, I would like to say that these things you don't normally see behind the scene, right? All this knowledge
Mm-mm-mm-mm.
are I acquired them during these 6 years of experimenting with all the materials and all the techniques. And to get to this stage, I spent a lot of time and money on the material as well, and also to do a lot of experimentation. So yeah, you, but if you want to start, sure, you can just buy those materials that I uh, showed earlier. You can do it. All right. If I can do it, you can do it. I'm not
Mm-mm.
particularly, uh, how do I say? I'm trained from the art, but you can, you know, who
Yeah, what
knows?
you're
Maybe
saying is that give it time. Your first model isn't going to be everything that you hope for, but give it
yes,
time, make some basic things, and then you can build up and do more interesting things as time goes on.
yes. All right. So eh, oh, right. After I created the models and all, I made the mold. Then I started to mold and cast it, and these are the outcomes. Yeah.
That's just, yeah, super lovely, and especially when it's painted, of course.
Yes. So these are some showcase of my work. So we'll show. I'll just show you some of my work before we get on to the more detailed stuff. So this is another follow up project, which is the slug flyer, which is also part of the the metal slug game. Okay. So again, you can see that I use the yellow color uh, milliput and also
Mm-mm-mm.
flash color super sculpey to create this model, and then after that I casted it as well. All
Yeah,
right.
and there's some intricate stuff going on the base. How do you make sure that it's not going to be too heavy for this little thin, um, basically for the stand? Is
For
that just a
me,
bit of awareness and practice that you're like, okay, I'm not going to push it to the extreme. I'm just going to do something that I know can definitely bear the weight.
okay, so when you're sculpting in real life instead of 3D model, you can feel the weight of the object, right? And
Mm-mm-mm.
you definitely know that it will support or not, because the thing is in front of you. You are holding it. You already know that it's light enough to be supported by that
And
stick.
I guess you're putting it on the stick and you can, oh, is this okay? Okay, let me just try it for a minute.
Yeah, yeah. You can straight away try whatever you want. You can change whatever you want, and then it's
Hmm.
already in a physical form. You know.
Something really interesting about the organic nature of what you get from these sculpts.
All right. This is another project that I did. I was thinking of creating a 3D version of the Catan tiles, obviously. So I started sculpting, and you can see that the sculpting I did use Fimo as well, the
Hmm.
purple ones. Purple Fimo and some, because they are on sale at some store. The store is closing down. They are on sale, so I bought a bunch of them, and then I just started using them for sculpting as well for the base. And then after I created them, I made castings, mold and cast, and then I painted the whole set. Yeah.
Mm-mm. And with those little trees, um, did that have to be cast separately, or were you able to do the entire tile
Okay, that
in one
was
cast?
the whole tile is one cast. That's what I refer to as the durability. So you can see that the trees, I don't think you can see that, but some of the trees are in big bunches instead of individual. I
Mm-mm.
try to make them as thick as stable as possible so that when you cast it, it doesn't break off or something like that.
Because presumably there's little gaps, and this epoxy that you're using for the cast, sorry, is it the epoxy that then makes the mold? What was that material again?
Silicon, the most.
Silicon, sorry.
Yeah, it's okay.
And with the silicon, then that really gets into all of these gaps. So you have this same level of detail on that tile as on the copies. Is that correct?
Yes.
That's
So
amazing to
so
me.
that's it's easy for me to create like same tiles. Like for the forest tile, you need four of them per game, right? So you can just cast four of them out, and then
Mm-mm.
they will be the same. Yeah. All right. This is the next thing, which is the one of the largest production I ever made. The first largest production I ever made for a game, and I sculpted the miniatures. This is Kleptopoly, a Monopoly clone of a game about Malaysians politicians, corrupt politicians. So to educate children uh, in school about not saying no to corruptions, right? So the characters I will sculpt with again same with the same materials, and after that I made molds. You can see the molds on the bottom right there. Those are the
Mm-mm-mm.
molds for the houses of the Monopoly game, right? There's a big mansion and also some houses. So they are basically silicon like rubber materials, and then I pour the resin in, and then when I pull it out, then you get the miniatures.
Okay,
So
and then
I
for the tube, if the basic thing is going to be roundish, then you'll use a cylinder. If it's going to be something more like a house, then it makes sense for you to use something that's a square area
yes, yes.
for to pour the silicon into. You've
So
got
the
to think what's proper for the given context.
Yeah, so if your miniature, it is the best way is to calculate the shape of your uh, silicon according to the shape of your miniature. So if it's like a squarish shape, because the house is squarish, so I just use a squarish container
And
to.
presumably for the previous ones, like the metal slug, where it's a big long thing, you made you did you make a unique container for those?
No, I still use the cylinder because it's
Okay.
easier, and yep. Anyway, this one I need. Sorry, go back to the previous slide. This one I need to point out to people that yes, you can use this process to create uh, miniatures for your game. And I did 1,000 sets for this, and it has been sold out. And yeah, I casted 1,000 sets of these miniatures.
Mm.
Yes, it is possible. It took me around 6 months, and it is possible. Yes. All right, this is another showcase of a recent game that I'm doing. Again, I'm using the same process. I am sculpting the characters. As you can see, some of the characters are not finished sculpting yet. And yeah, this game won the Peach Project of 2020. And I haven't had any publisher yet because maybe I wanted to publish it myself. Recently, I finished all the characters. I'll be showcasing it next month in a festival, and I'll take a lot of pictures.
Which festival is that?
Is a the festival I mentioned before is a
Oh, the
Butterworth Fringe
cultural
Festival.
festival.
Yeah, it's a cultural festival. I'll be showcasing this game.
Okay, cool.
Yep.
And I guess hopefully it's simple enough that even people who aren't really into board games can spend a little bit of time and get to know it. There's nothing
Yes.
too complex going on, I assume.
Yeah, it's a simple family game where you just hang clothings up to dry. You can see the hang dryer there.
Mm-mm.
Yep. And then you collect points. That's it. All right. So
Lovely.
that's are some showcase of my game, and then I will share a little bit about how I did a publishing journey of my game using handmade techniques. Okay. So this is a story of Vagrant Dash. As you can see, all the miniatures I cast them personally, and kind of like the same with the Kleptopoly production there. All right, so let's
Yeah,
start.
I guess that at some point you really want to start automating these things a bit more than you've currently got.
Yeah, I'll do a conclusion later on in
Mm-mm.
this process, what I think about this process. So at the start, I was doing like what you said, like what I mentioned earlier. I want to make toys for production, so I started sketching some stuff like tanks and missile launchers and stuff, uh, and I started using clay, polymer clay to make them. But as you can see, they are pretty rough. This is my first. Uh, One of the earlier version of my work. So they are pretty rough. And then I showed this to my friend, and then he immediately told me, "Hey, you should make a game out of this." So that's on to the next slide. You will see that me and him started to play the game that will be Vagrant Dash. The prototype is just a board that I just draw some square on it, and I
Mm-mm-mm.
started sculpting the early version of the miniatures. As you can see, they're again pretty rough, using the same material, Sculpey and also the epoxy putty.
Yeah, this is
Yeah,
super early, and you can really see how far it's come compared to these beautiful
yeah.
things.
This is smaller as well because of the scale. I need to make sure all them fit on the board, and I don't
Mm-mm.
want the board to be too big as well. All right, so then we can move on to the next one. I learned to do the mold. So the mold, I started using Lego bricks as the barriers and stuff, and I slowly improved myself to create a two-part mold. Two-part mold means that it will open and close like this instead of being cut. So you
Mm.
can see that the cavities is in there. When I pour the resin, then the miniature will be produced. All right.
Ah, interesting.
Yes. So after that, I started to refine the miniature more until I get the final version. After I get the final version, I'll spray paint them. Spray painting them will make the surface uh, smoother. So when you cast them, it won't look so rough, right? So I
Yeah.
have to make sure that the miniature is smooth and nice so that I started casting them.
Now, I
Okay.
know that we don't have time to get into all the details, but can I
Yeah.
actually ask you to give a very quick overview of the two parts mold, what you mean by that, and how you did it using your what you had to hand?
All right. So in molding, uh, they have like different techniques, right? This one, the first one that I show you, this one is called a cut mold, because the mold is separated by cutting. But
Mm-mm-mm.
for some other molds that very complicated shapes, you might want to do a two-part mold so that you will design how two halves of them will fit together. So that you can see on the on the right side, the picture, I made two halves of it. One half is the top half, and the other is the bottom half. So that when I close it together, they will form the miniatures.
So here, the three green parts are all for one mold.
No, no, the green part is one part of the mold. The pink one is the other half. So you can see like
Oh, so you matched
yeah,
the left to the right. Okay, got it.
Yeah, so I put them in different color because it's easier to see the separating line when you cover them together, right? So when you're
Mm.
opening, you know that where you're supposed to open the miniatures.
And so you're making half a mold on the left for this sort of hammer thing, and
It's the base for the aircraft. You know, the aircraft has,
okay,
yeah.
that's the base. That makes perfect sense. And
Then
so how can you just how do you do this? I mean, like honestly, like it's so far beyond my understanding. How do you make sure that they're going to fit together? How do you work out that this is half the halfway point and it's going to match up with the other halfway point? How,
okay,
yeah.
basically, if when you are sculpting it, it can fit together, then it can fit together. That's it. Because you're sculpting it as a physical object, you are not doing it in 3D modeling or anything. You can just pretty much, if it doesn't fit, you just use a sander or anything that keep.
Wait, so
Uh,
are you saying that the actual object you cut the master copy into two halves?
no, 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 no. It will be like this. So you can see in the middle of the Lego, the base is there is some gray color
Yes, yes.
clay there. I'm going to cover the half of it with the clay so that when I pour silicone on it, only half of the miniature is copied to the silicone. And then after
Mm-mm-mm.
that, I'm going to take it out, the silicone, and I'm going to flip it on the other side. And then I pour the other side of the silicone to make the other side of the
Okay,
mold.
so when
Yeah,
you're
yeah.
making the second half, you're pouring directly onto the silicon.
Yes, so that when you're pouring on top of the silicone, they'll stick together. So in order to stop them from sticking together, you need to apply a layer of anything that you can find. I use Vaseline
Mm-mm-mm.
to separate them so that they don't stick together. And then after the both side cured, I can just pull it out, and then the miniatures will come out, and then I can use the cavities to make more of the miniatures. Yes.
And then when you're pouring it into it, do you basically have to pour resin into one half, resin into the other half, and then you just do that? Is that how it works?
Yes, there are a lot of techniques that you can use for casting. So yes, for this particular mold, I will pour some in one of the cavities and then some on the other one. I'll wait for them to cure halfway, and then I'll put more in the middle to rub it in, and then they will stick together
Okay.
after that. Yeah.
And just how long does resin take to cure?
It depends on the brand that you use. There are the ones that I use is 20 minutes. So
Okay,
every
so we're
time,
talking like leave it there, do something else for 10 minutes, then
yes,
come back, apply a bit more resin so it's essentially glue, stick it
yes,
together.
yes,
That's amazing. Thank you very much for explaining all of this.
yes, yes. My pleasure. So after have the master copy, then I started to produce the mass production. So
Mm-mm.
next slide. So this is what my table looks like. It is not like a big factory or anything that produce the game that you see. It's actually just a small table, and then I'm just doing this every day
Yeah, this
repeatedly.
is very much a cottage industry, very much a passion project, it looks like.
Yes, and this is to show you that people usually, when I said that make games, people think that I own like a big factory, push game out or anything. No, it's just a small table in my room, and I do this every day, and to yeah, and package the game myself, which I show on the next slide. After I casted them, um, for the first production run, I actually painted them. So I painted them one by one.
Oof,
Yeah,
that is wow, that's dedication.
yeah, but it's a simple paint job. It's a production paint job. It's not like the the war game kind of
Yeah, yeah,
finishing
this
painting.
is just you kind of saying, okay, I'm going to Color
put
in
some
the
here.
end of the barrel of the gun.
Yes, something like that. So I made the first run using this technique. Is kind of eh, it's very tiring when you're doing it yourself. I would imagine if I hire someone to do it for me, it's still a viable production.
But
Yes.
for the resin that you put in, the base color, do you just use different colors of resin, I guess?
Yes, the resin you can buy pigments, which are like a powder, and then you can
Mm.
just mix in with the resin. The resin is translucent actually, so
Oh,
I'll just mix it in, and then
wow. So you could actually make transparent minis. Why has no one done
yes,
this? I love
I don't know.
transparent stuff. We should have more transparent minis. That would be super cool. And
I,
then
I
you,
yeah, you can see that there's this transparent one.
that is,
That's
wow, that is
amazing, right?
cool. Yeah.
But then again, people want to paint the miniature, so I don't know. The original resin really looks like this.
Okay.
This is a barrel of a bale of rice. I don't know. You can. Yeah. So I don't
I
know.
mean, I'm just imagining, like, let's make a game about ghosts. And then
Sure.
everyone is yeah, because ghosts are transparent. Ghosts and spirits. So everything can be transparent.
Let me try this. Nah.
Well, anyway, you've added the pigments, you made some blue, some red, you added bits of details, and then you continue hand making everything going on in the game.
Yes. For the particularly the tiles, I cut all the tiles like that. You can watch the
Mm-mm.
video in my Facebook page, Vagrant Dash. I had this video of me cutting it. So I cut all of them. I also made all the boards using hand, and then I sorted all the cards myself. I even string wrapped the game myself. Yes,
And it'll be in this Facebook page if people want to check it out.
this is for Hardknocks Creatives. There's another one separate for the game, particularly called Vagrant Dash. You can just search for that as well.
Okay, so search for Vagrant Dash on Facebook.
Yep.
Okay.
So yeah, this is the whole process that I went through, and then I created this. And what I learned, the conclusion that I have, that this process works, and also a lot of industrial standard factory is actually using the process that I'm doing, but instead they have workers, and they are doing it in a larger scale. All right, and
Mm-mm-mm.
it's labor intensive. And then I find that handmade things, some people say that handmade things are more intricate, right? But it doesn't always be like that. It depends on the skill of the person making it. So it can be
Yes.
really good, but then again, if you're not good at doing it, it might suffer a bit. And so that plastic injection is more stable than handmade things. uh, and also, I tried to do everything myself, and the conclusion is no, one person cannot publish a board game by themselves and still stay sane. Right?
Mm.
Yeah, it doesn't work out. Vegan Dash didn't sell much at all because I don't have a lot of ready product. It requires my time,
Mm-mm-mm-mm.
and because of earlier I mentioned my working hour is really brutal. I don't have much time to work on the production of the game.
Yeah, I mean,
Uh,
the truth is, even if it's your full-time job making the game, I mean, if you're doing the design and the art, like I've never done the actual manufacturing of a game before. So it's really
yeah.
interesting talking to people like yourself, or in the UK, we've got Jackson Pope and Gavin Birnbaum who are making these games, actually manufacturing them themselves, which is really
Hmm.
interesting. And I don't have too much interest in doing that, although maybe one day just for the experience. But
Yeah.
I think that then even going to the point of it's not enough to just have made it, then you need to make it available to purchase, and then you need to do all the marketing. And this is so much. And this is where having the sounding board, frankly, you talk about doing it yourself, but even here with Vagrant Dash, we've got, if we go earlier, to your friend who said, hey, make a game based on this, yeah, on the left, for your friend to give you the encouragement. You've got like the support network, the people around you who do so much. And so I think I don't know if we can really say that anything was just the work of one person, if you know what I mean.
Yeah. Of course, the printing, I sent it to print on the printing company, so it's not really just one person. But I did most of the thing myself, like the promotion video as well. My
And
voiceover
then
is
again,
horrible.
even if we go that far, we could say, well, even if you um, did a printing yourself, well, you didn't make the cards, did you?
Yeah.
Someone else manufactured. Like, how far do you want to go? And we cannot exist in isolation. Like, you
Yes.
didn't manufacture these resins or silicon or any of
Yep.
these things. And so we do not exist in a silo. We do not exist, without anything. And the things that we can do are only because of, I think, the modern world, our friends
Yes.
around us, and the materials that we have. I mean, frankly, yeah, thousands of years ago, neither of us could be talking to each
Yeah.
other. Like, frankly, 100 years ago, I mean, maybe even 20 years ago, neither of us could be talking to each other, let
Yes.
alone, and the whole notion of all of these materials to make this stuff, like 1,000 years ago, might just have been inconceivable. I don't think you would
Yes.
have gotten this sort of opportunity. And I think it
Yeah.
really says something about modern life that we can focus on recreation and joyful things.
Yes, if you put it that way, then yes, we are very fortunate that we live in such a world right now. We can just buy things
Mm-mm.
online, right? It gets sent to you immediately. Yep, correct. But what I'm saying that is,
Try and
try
find
try
other
not to do.
people to
Yeah,
help you.
yeah.
I agree
Yes,
with
yes.
that for sure.
Yeah. So that's conclude my sharing for today, and yeah, I couldn't go too much into detail because it will take a lot more time than
Oh
it
no,
have
that's
right now.
brilliant. That's perfect. And
Yeah,
we've only got like 3 minutes left of the
yeah.
hour. So I mean, I do try to aim for 40 minutes, but like then it's normally 1 hour long. I'm not going to lie. But it's been a lovely, joyous chat, and I've asked you a lot of questions. You've told me a
Yes.
lot of stuff, but would you like to now ask me something? What would you like to ask myself and anyone watching as the question of the day? Question of the day. Here's a little question before we go on our way. Question of the day.
Uh, why do you choose this particular hairstyle?
Um, this hairstyle because it's easy, honestly. So I had my hair tied up last night, but before I go to bed, I put it down, and it's like, well, I'm going to put headphones. So I like having long hair because, yeah, growing it out, it feels more. I want to present more feminine, I guess, and yeah, the fact that it's currently down, that's mainly because it's easier. If I'm actually going somewhere, I will normally have it up so it's kind of looks a little bit fancier.
I used to have a very long hair around my back.
Were you a rocker?
I do like rock song, yeah, sure. Yeah, but after I became dad, it's easier to just have this short hair. I kind of miss my long hair though.
I mean, for sure, it is more practical if, like, a baby can't just suddenly start pulling that. I mean, that's how, yeah, a bit painful.
And I also work in the factory, so you can't have long hair in the factory. It's a hazard.
Mm-mm-mm.
Ah, too bad. You look
So,
amazing, by the way.
oh, thank you very much. So this is the end of the show, and always, what are you up to now? Over to you. What are you up to? You can share what's on if you want to. So personally, I am going to. I mean, I've got a bunch of stuff that I need to do, but I am going to take a little bit of time, like half an hour, to get out. But within half an hour, I'll be back to work where I'm putting the new games on the shop, making a shop deal for what the Americans call Black Friday. And I don't like this sense of, oh, it all has to be on one day, but it's going to last about, my deal is going to last maybe, not entirely decided, I'm going to say 1.5 weeks. So it'll stop not on Tuesday coming, but on the Tuesday afterwards. And if people buy 3 things, they will get a free copy of Innerbind Junior. So buy 3 games and you get one very specific game free. If you've already got Innerbind Junior, well, you get a bonus copy and you can give it to a friend. Hopefully you agree that it's a good enough game to give away. So if you're looking for presents or something to give to little people or indeed older people, then that's something to check out. And I'm going to post a bunch of stuff, reply to some emails from the shop, reply to some individual people, email some people, and whatever I've managed to do, I am stopping at 6 p.m. because I do want to enjoy my evening. I'm going to go outside, have dinner, have a bit of a dance, and then excited for tomorrow, where I every Friday is a brilliant day. I get to play test with other lovely people from 10 a.m. until 5 p.m. And then we also have a couple of hours of playing published games. So that is my favorite day of the week, where we just play each other's games for 7 hours. It's wonderful.
Wow.
Um, what about you? What are you up to? Are you just having dinner and then going to sleep? What's going on?
I'm going to work on my stuff. So, like Super Sniper, it has been funded. Now I have to prepare all the production files so that we can start production earlier and hopefully send them off before the projected time.
Mm-mm-mm. Well, I hope that everything goes brilliantly with that. I mean, yeah, at this point, the I'm not going to say easy work, but it's so easy to forget. Yes, once your Kickstarter's funded, that's just the start of your journey. Well, it's not quite the start, it's like the middle of your journey. Now you need to make sure that you deliver on all your promises.
Yeah, so I
And
got to work hard.
for now, I think it's time to recap and wrap up before we finish up. We talked about Hwa Siang being in the office, having these long hours from 7, sometimes until 7, 12-hour days, 6 days a week, but thankfully managing to catch small bits of time. We talked about the brilliance of routine. We shared a whole bunch of slides essentially, where talking about Metal Slug, and we didn't I just want to acknowledge that this is an IP and we didn't really explore the ramifications or the ethics of doing something that's based on someone else's
This is a
IP.
small production run for friends, so it's not really sold on the
Okay, so
market.
the
Yeah.
Metal Slug, the tank, and the helicopter, it wasn't something that you ever sold for money.
Uh, for my friends, he did pay some money for the materials, but it's not really sold on the market. So don't worry about that.
Okay. And we went through the journey of how it was made bit by bit with a screwdriver chiseling off stuff. We talked about the different types of materials that you might use, about all the different types of knowledge that you might want to know, and had a lovely demonstration of what molding actually looks like. And so that was really fascinating to see. Um, I mean, the models look great, and I can understand why your friends would be absolutely delighted to have one of these essentially as a present, and getting your teeth stuck into making these beautiful objects until you start making your own games with completely unique things. And this is really interesting kleptopoli, where you're really trying to make a statement of, hey, don't give in to um, corruption, don't like try to, yeah, like actually making a political statement, which I think games are art. And I think I would like to see more games that aren't, well, I would like to see more games that are about joy and having nice times and having lovely times together. But I would also like to see way more games that are about corruption or subjugation of power or bigotry or discrimination or all the other things that we can really explore through the
Hmm.
artistic mediums. And these are just gorgeous. And congratulations on winning the pitch project back in 2020, and it's actually surprising to hear that you've not had the um, publisher interest that I kind of assumed that you would have. I don't know if that's. Do you think that's because of maybe you already had so much art done and they once didn't have space to put in their own artistic vision? I don't know.
Uh, I did send to one of the publisher, but they turned it down because it's not similar to the product they were producing.
Mm-mm.
And ever since then, I didn't approach anyone because I had this vision on my mind, and I want to just bring it out. I don't think anyone that is not living in Malaysia will understand this vision, so I had to do it myself.
Hmm. That's
Yep.
really cool. And I love the fact that you've said, hey, this deserves to exist. And is that actually the way the box is going to look? So the box is going to look like a building from the
Yes,
side.
this is a building, a heritage site that actually exists in Malaysia, Penang, which is a shop that wash their clothing at the river beside the building. It actually exists, so that's why the bridge there is called uh, what we it literally translates to clothes washing rivers bridge.
Huh.
Yeah,
Wow. That's
so
really cool. And yeah, it this is the kind of thing where I see this game and then it makes me think, oh, maybe I will, if I'm in Penang, which I probably will be at some point in the future years, maybe I'll go and give this place a visit and kind of check it out. And in the game, there could be a little manual and a little note about where this place is. And it feels like these kinds of things can really raise awareness of what's going on in the world. And
yes.
that's, yeah,
As far
just,
as I
yeah.
know, it still exists. The place. I'm not sure it's the same look. It probably changed. The building probably changed, but I think it's still there.
And then we talked about Vagrant Dash, where you started off with these, well, not these are lovely, but with these fairly simple models, primitive, and then if you don't mind me using that word, then your friends think, hey, let's make a game out of them, and then you're really working hard to make these two-piece silicon
Mm.
molds, and then talked us through how you poured the resin, then you did a little bit more resin, and then put it together. I mean, obviously there's industrial injection molding, but that was a bit out with your capabilities. But yeah, there's something lovely going on here when you can see that it's all done in a very cottage industry sort of way. When you think, yeah, all of these things were done by an individual. And I totally get what you say about this being incredibly tiring. I mean, I think that I would get bored doing this, like when I write the addresses or when I do little doodles for people, and after a while I'm like, yeah, why did I start doing all these doodles for everyone? But I hope that you're still finding joy in this process, and I absolutely agree that whilst are any of us really sane to start off with? What's his sanity? But for sure, by having a support network, by doing things with other people, we can try to maintain some semblance of mental health.
Yes.
And I think that thank you so much for taking on through that journey. We also talked about hair. And then if you want to check me out, I am Stuff by Bez in all of the places. Tomorrow, it's just going to be a quick hello from Waterloo Bridge. I'll be standing just beside the bridge before I go in, and I'll wave a quick hello and goodbye, and I'll be gone within 5-10 minutes. But I'll give you a quick wrap, bit sort of a catch up on what I've been up to, and hopefully I'll get a whole bunch of stuff done over the next 24 hours. Um, After that, I've got a couple of guests lined up for next week, but I'm working out the details with them a bit last minute. We'll see how that goes. But if you want to check out Hwa Siang, where would you like to be found?
I'm mostly on Instagram and Facebook. Just search for Hardknocks Creatives.
Well, thank you once more for the lovely chat. Thank you everyone who's watching, and please do leave a comment if you're watching after the fact. I try to reply to all the respectful comments. Share, spread the word. Most importantly, thank you, Hwa Siang. And the only thing left to say is bye, 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 bye. This is a goodbye song. Do, 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 bye, 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 bye. Thank you for watching along. Bye, 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 bye. This is the end of the show. Bye, 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 bye. And now it's time to go. Bye, 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 bye. This is a goodbye song. Bye, 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 bye. Thank you for watching along. Bye, 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 bye. This is the end of the show. Bye, 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 bye. And now it's time to go. Bye, bye, everyone.